Before to ask you some questions, I would like to know more about your story and how did you became one of the top speaker and especially your struggles, because a lot of people are thinking, oh, the successful people are lucky, it's easy for them, and I'd love to share struggles and how you overcame it. So who
Sure.
are you?
Well, first off, I think it's just the opposite. I think if you poll, and I have polled, and most of my friends and people that I know that are successful or have accomplished a lot have gone through a lot of struggles, and oftentimes come through times that were insurmountable, if you will. And there are several books that are written about it. I remember reading one not too long ago, forgive me, I don't remember the title, but it was about the amount of people who became successful as a result of having been fired from a job. And at the time they thought it was the bottom. And for myself, I grew up in middle class, you know, I had a great family and great parents and everything, but when I was 18 years old, 3 grown men tried to take my life because of the color of my skin. And it robbed me of my confidence and my self-esteem and my self-worth. And I wound up homeless. I live in Los Angeles now, but I lived in a place not too far from here called Lancaster, and I lived in a cardboard box. And what changed it for me was somebody gave me a book, and it was somebody that I didn't know. It was a kind person that gave me this book, and the book was called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Greatest book ever. And I was, 18 years old and didn't want to read it, but he almost forced me to read it, and I begrudgingly read it. And when I read it, it changed everything. It changed how I thought about myself, and I recognized that I could change myself, how I thought, how I felt about myself, and how I viewed the world around me. And I did some of the fundamentals in the book, which 2 things happened. Number one, doing them, my life changed, I changed, and I started to produce more. But it also made me recognize that it wasn't just the knowledge. And I remember thinking this at the time, David, that it wasn't just what was in that book, it's what I did. And when I went back to that person to thank him and to tell him, to ask him what I could do for him, what he said to me was, what you do for me is what I've done for you. He said, you help as many people as you possibly can change their lives. And at first I didn't take it seriously, but as I grew and started to recognize that's my calling, and that's what I love to do, and that's why I do what I do now.
It's amazing.
Thank you.
And maybe 80% of the people I interviewed said me, if I have one book to recommend,
Yes.
it is Think and Grow Rich. And I don't know, it's amazing. It's the
Yes.
same book for
Over
everyone.
and over again, because it's the fundamentals. It's like learning how to walk. If you want to make changes and understand that human beings can change, and just the fundamentals of personal development are all right there.
Yeah. And you started to do speeches, right?
No, not right away. As a matter of fact, I was in survival mode, so I just wanted to have a roof over my head and have a girlfriend, and have some fundamentals. And but my dream back then was I wanted to be a musician. I wanted to be a professional musician. I wanted to make records. I wanted to do all that stuff. And so that I got a job. I started working. I started doing things, and that was what I pursued for many years. And using those principles, made my way into the music world and started doing that first. And then I got a recording deal in 1990. Yeah, in 1990, and the record company. They gave us some money. They started to produce the record and everything, and then the record company changed hands. They sold to another company, and I got my person that represented me left the company, and I got so I was stuck in there, and I couldn't make music because the contract wouldn't let me do it. So that's when I decided, I've got to do something else, and that's when I started doing what I do now. Because all along I had been working with a couple of my mentors, as you know, Tony Robbins, and teaching a little bit and learning a lot. And I just started doing this and wrote my first book, and that became very successful. And then
What was your first book?
My first book was called Unlimited Power of
Yeah,
Our Choice. Yeah, and it was a bestseller back in '96. And, yeah, way long time ago, and then from there I started enjoying. Well, first I also got a degree in psychology, and I opened a practice in Los Angeles, seeing every known weirdo you could possibly imagine. And I say that jokingly, because people have challenges all over the place. And I became very proficient in helping people get over fears and phobias and emotional challenges and those type of things. And again, I was working with Tony at the same time as well. And I started to recognize, well, gosh, one-on-one is great, and I still love to do that. But to reach more people, I needed to have larger audiences. And so I wrote some more books and started doing more of that. And that's kind of what I do now.
And so there is a lot of people who are trying to become speakers, experts, or authors. Why did you succeed in this field?
That's a great question. If I was to be honest with you, and I hope this doesn't sound too noble, it's because I care. It's because I do have technique, and I think that's important, but I think what's more important is to care about your audience. You know, we are just now, I'm creating a speaker's performance school, if you will, to teach people to teach people to speak and to present and that type of thing, and teach some of the techniques that are not out there. And I've had some great mentors that have taught me and that I've learned from and observed. But I think the answer to your question is because I really do. I love people and I care about my audience, and that makes the biggest difference. That with the technique makes the biggest difference.
So yeah, the first step is to care about your audience.
Yes.
And when you have that, what did you change? Who did you become? Maybe some traits you developed in yourself to have this kind of success. Did you have developed humor, perseverance? What did you develop?
Well, again, I've had lots of mentors, and some of my mentors were not even speakers. Some of my mentors were humorous people. I really like David Letterman. I like Eddie Murphy. But I also like Martin Luther King, and one of my mentors, Anthony Robbins, and several other speakers around. And I think to answer your question, who I became is a conglomeration of who I brought to the table, meaning all my years of being a musician and who I believe I am, as well as some of the traits that I borrowed from other people. But I think probably, again, I have to go back to, I've got to look at, there are specific things. I always tell people when I'm speaking, because I like to give everything away. I don't want there to be any secrets. And I'll tell people, watch what I do, watch what I say, everything that I do from the time that I start to the time that I finish has a reason and a purpose, and you can see it now, and I'll share it with you. And when people watch it, because that's what I did. I watched, and I had people teach me, but then all the way back to Think and Grow Rich, it's what you do, it's what you practice, it's what you rehearse that'll produce yourself.